They want their own servers, their own storage, their own backup and so on, in order to actually pay for only for what they're using. They did really have huge problem how to calculate what the Amazon, Google, Akamai use. Few banks, insurance, and governments went out from the cloud and go back to using and own their own data center. Hello and everyone, this is Tsafrir Lahav from AimBetter. You are watching and listening Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
Welcome, data center friends from around the globe. I'm Joshua Feinberg from the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast, and I'm thrilled to have a very special guest joining me today. I'm welcoming Tsafrir Lahav, who is the Global Vice President of Sales at AimBetter based in Israel. Tsafrir, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for hosting me, Joshua. It's really my pleasure to be here.
My pleasure as well. And you have a really interesting, unique background at the intersection of software, B2B, mid-market, and enterprise technology, and a lot of background working with data centers and telecommunications over the last few decades. So I'm super curious to find out how you ended up in this place in your career. Was this something that you thought about when you were younger, in high school and university, or did this career path just happen accidentally along the way?
So I think as a good fairy tale, it just happened that I joined up to the right companies. That's actually started from a little bit before 2000, and it was actually the first company was ADIC, owned by Quantum for the last few years, and they are doing huge tape library in HSM solutions, and I was the European manager, and it was like starting in data center environment with huge banks, insurance, even before data center colocation even started or had a huge footprint like today. So we had to do actually teaching, because most of the companies working with single tape per server, and we came for these huge data centers of banks, insurance company, governments, municipality, healthcare, and everyone. Now we have to teach that they can work not with a library, with tape library, huge one, 2,000 cassettes, 5,000 cassettes, 10,000 cassettes, on different side of backup solutions. And we started to plan DRP, disaster recovery plan for these companies, and we didn't have the rules because it was new territory. Nobody understood what to do, how to open a DR for backup. And it was really, really teaching ground to everyone. And we actually wrote the rules as we started to install these big tape libraries in these huge companies. And then the software companies of backup solution like Veritas Net Backup, Legato, IBM TSM, we had to work hand-to-hand with them to understand how the software is working, how we implement in databases, in systems, in rules. IBM was teaching for one full backup and then incremental forever. The other one want full backup every weekend and differential in the middle of the week. So it was really few years of massive teaching, learning and teaching everyone how to do DR, how to do backup, how to move from single tape to tape libraries, and then to DR in disaster recovery data center. So it was really the start, and then come the cloud back in the early 2000s, 2002, 3, 4. Cloud started to appear, and we say, what the hell is cloud? We are one. We do everything over one. What is cloud? It's the same. It actually was on the same company that give disaster recovery place to the big banks and insurance and governments. And now we need to understand, instead of calling it one, it's actually a cloud-based data centers. So it also was really a lot of learning, a lot of teaching, a lot of branding that we had to understand how to do it, how to approach the market, and it was great years of working with the biggest data centers in Europe and State and Middle East. And then I moved, Quantum purchased ADIC, and I moved to Crescendo Networks. Crescendo Networks was also a new concept of data center, of database performance acceleration and internet acceleration and DDoS attack protection. So it's 3 devices in one alliance, and you need now to go to the big data centers and the big clients and tell them, okay, we can do database acceleration, we can do internet acceleration for you with less servers and much more efficiency, and we can protect you from DDoS, from the attack of DDoS. It was 2007. Nobody understands that there is a DDoS attack, what's the meaning of it, and how come we need protection for something that we know we have crashed our internet sometimes, but nobody understood it's come from DDoS attack, denial of service attack. Today it's one of the biggest attacks all over for the last few years. So again, we need to do branding, we need to do teaching, we need to do learning, and we actually got it, our product in a lot of data centers, and also data center colocation and data center host provider. It was a few years of massive selling and teaching and a lot of proof of concept in order to show them that with two solution, hardware and software, like appliance, you can actually discount the amount of load balancing and networking and service that you're doing in order to support your customer. So it was really exciting years over there. And F5 purchased Crescendo, and we move on to the next adventure. The next 2 adventure, I was actually one of the founders. The first one was ITAS. We're doing IT infrastructure analyze end-to-end from server to backup. We had some huge installation across the state, Europe, and so on. It was the first time that actually we could give customers to look at their infrastructure end-to-end to understand what the connection between hardware and software, where is the single point of failure issue, where is the product that doesn't give you any productivity, even though everything is connected to fiber channel switches, to storage, to servers, to databases. So we had huge installation, and we have immediately ROI because we could identify all the single point of failure and all the products that you can actually discount or disconnect, and actually use them for another reason. From there, we've been purchased, and then we moved to Corelata. It's a next generation of ITSM correlation between product with C-level dashboard. So it was on the same base, but with C-level dashboard, all the compliance, regulation, and on data centers, we had a joint venture with Amdocs, with CNE, with IBM. With IBM, we actually did something very unique. We give them end-to-end in Mainframe and AS400, and we actually build them the first Mainframe services over cloud back in 2016. It was the first time IBM could afford or can offer services to mainframe solutions. And in 2020, it was also happy end, and we move on. And now I'm with AimBetter. We are doing the next generation of observability and monitors. It's called RTPS, real-time problem solving, meaning we can actually give you end-to-end database system, OS, the real-time problem solving, meaning we present the problem, we present the root cause, or make the problem, and we present solving recommendation, meaning in one dashboard you can actually see the problem, see who made the problem all over, if it's the system, the OS, the database, the antivirus, the backup, the disk, who made the problem that make you with poor performance or downtime or code error and so on, and then even and solving recommendations, some of them with copy-paste, some of them with screenshot, take it to the DBA, it will know how to fix it, and it's shortened the time for solving problems in 80%. And for the last 3 years, we have more than 800 customers, meaning more than one customer per business day, working business day. And our customers is huge customers: Amazon, Monday.com, Verifone, Brinks, insurance company, healthcare, government, GSA, USA GSA, government of Italy, Burger King, H&M, you name it, working with us. So we have massive percentage of going from proof of concept to installation, because once the IT manager C-level see the attraction of the product, he doesn't want to keep it, doesn't want to leave it, he wants to keep it, and it's really a win-win to everyone. And it's actually from days and hours of fixing problem to seconds or minutes. So this is the environment that I'm living today, and it's from 2000 to now, almost 25 years of massive working in data center environment.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is the common thread is there's always been a training and a consulting element to this along the way, and probably has prepared you extremely well, because in the world we live in now, where people are just doing so much more research on their own with reading blogs and articles and watching YouTube videos and listening to podcasts and asking questions on LinkedIn, a lot of times by the time they get to a sales conversation, they're very deep into the journey. So in order for a sales professional in digital infrastructure or anything in mid-market or enterprise IT to earn their way in, they really do need to be seen as an expert. They need to be seen as a consultant, and the clients, the prospects, need to want to spend time with them as opposed to the other way around. So what's really interesting is starting your career at a time where the training was incredibly important. I mean, just to put this in perspective for anyone that's watching, that's a millennial or Gen Z especially, there used to be a time, and then we started our careers around the same time. There used to be a time where the only way you learned how to use software was either by taking a class or getting a big 500 or 600 page book that looked like a telephone book. That was, by the way, what existed before Google My Business, and looking up phone numbers online. But yeah, there used to be a huge need to spend a significant amount of time doing a lot more education, doing a lot more both pre-sales and post-sales, and that was an integral part of helping clients get value. So it sounds like regardless of the company size that you've been at, regardless of the role that you've been at, regardless of the technology, and I do remember fondly the times back when tapes and tape libraries, and at the time I was working with SMBs, small and medium-sized businesses more, but I still remember the DDS tapes and training the internal person to rotate them, and there was frequently errors and they had to be tested and verified all the time, and it was a nightmare having to rotate them off-site and everything, but somehow it managed to work. Seems very
Exactly.
archaic by today's standards, but that was pre-SaaS, pre-cloud. With all of that in mind, you're at the stage in your career now where I imagine from time to time, young professionals who high school, college, trying to figure out what they want to do when they graduate, may be approaching you, maybe they're neighbors, sons or daughters of friends or family members or coworkers, and they're curious for your advice on what it's like to work in and around digital infrastructure, data centers, especially if they don't want a career that's overly technical. They're not planning on being a developer or engineer. They're curious what these careers look like in sales, product management, channel partnerships, marketing. What advice would you give to someone like that who's super early on in their career and trying to figure out what they want to do for their first job?
So I do think that it's really, really important to actually work from base and go up, and not just learning on the surface about the product or about the solutions, and then start to speak with C-level or IT experience, and throw them a lot of buzzwords. It's not the way to do a good sales. So I do think also in marketing, and also you said, yes, I mean, marketing always like this buzzword and so on. But if you really want to be the right salesperson in mid-enterprise customers or mid-enterprise companies that approaching customers, learning the base, learning from, well, you don't need to go back to DOS or back to single tape library or whatever this used to be, IDE, SCSI, Fiber Channel, and so on. So just learn about the product that you promote, where it's come from, speak with the technical guys, speak with the CTO, learn about the base of the product, understand what was the vision of the company, what was the vision of the founders, what is dream of, what is thinking that the product should be. And then when you actually starting to approach customers, you know how to answer them when they have the right questions. And then you do need some time to say, okay, this is too technical. I need to bring my pre-sale. I need to bring my engineer. It's okay. But don't stop and just throwing buzzword to the air, because otherwise you will not penetrate the market with the product. So work with the team, learn the product, and approach the customers with respect. With respect to your product, respect your own solution, understand it, and then it will be much, much easier and smarter when you come to actually try and sell it to the right companies or to the right data centers. And don't forget, each C-level IT manager have per month hundreds of companies coming to him and try to sell him and try to show them that we have the next generation, or we have the next answers, or we can actually solve you these cyber points that nobody touched until now. So it's really a competitive market. They see a lot of companies, a lot of solutions all the time, and you really need to be understanding what you're selling in order to actually penetrate to the market.
Yeah, that's some great advice, because all too often what ends up happening, especially in smaller companies, if they don't have a really mature sales process, if they don't have a great onboarding process, the instinct is they hire someone for an SDR, sales development rep type of role, and they tell them to just a week or two later start calling as high as possible into the C-suite. And the reality is, what CTO or IT executive that's 40, 50, 60 something years old, that's 20, 30 years into their career, is going to get value from talking to someone that just started their first real job 6 weeks ago? It's crazy that someone would actually think that would work. So it's real. I think what a lot of people don't think about is, in a small company, the great part is you get a lot of autonomy and you learn a lot of different things that you frequently would never get to touch until years and years later, because it's so many different departments and so many different teams in a larger company. In a larger company, you're a lot more in a small role, but they may have the patience to provide that training program for a couple of weeks or a couple of months that essentially provides like the next level beyond what you got in your formal higher education. So yeah, there's a lot of trade-offs, and I don't think that people think enough about what that experience is going to be like. So yeah, the idea of just talking to the existing team members, talking to other people who've progressed through those roles. So a couple of websites, I forget what the names are now, but there's a couple of websites now where they've done, it's like reviews of sales teams, of their bosses, of the comp plans, who hits the quota. It's not Glassdoor, but it's a similar kind of idea specifically for people relaying their experiences in sales teams and how it's actually worked out, and the pros and cons of different approaches. So yeah, it's all fantastic.
100%.
What about someone that's more mid-career, maybe someone that you worked with 10 or 15 years ago, you haven't seen them in a while, but you bump into them at a conference and you start talking to them, you sit down, have a cup of coffee, and you recognize that they seem a little burnt out, and they're asking you for advice. They're asking for advice on how to get their career back on track. They're pretty sure they still want to stay in something related to digital infrastructure, managed services, data center, something related to that, but they're not really sure what their next move should be. How would you walk through a former coworker that used to be good friends with years back through that kind of conversation, through that kind of process?
So yeah, it's really, really a good question. So yeah, I had a few friends that's coming up for me for the last few years asking, okay, I'm working with Dell or working with HP or IBM or the other Checkpoint and all the others, and I'm great manager, or I'm a vice president or second in command, and everything is working. Nothing is coming up really, really interesting. So I do tell them, because of the last years, especially from Corona, that the market is really, really difficult all the time. So don't leave your job. Keep it, but start looking for the new trend that's coming up, either the new cyber company that raise money right now, and you can, by the way, we have Geek Time and others newspaper that you can see which company raise money, and then ask friends discreetly, what's going on, where is my next place. So I think the places right now that's looking for the good salespeople is cyber is always looking for the good people to lead the companies. I think AI, of course, with automation AI, is something that everybody is trying. We have in our product, it's already built in the machine learning AI in order to do all the nice automatically solutions and answers. And yeah, people, salespeople, really, if you're more than 4 or 5 years in a company, you're either a very good manager or either you're afraid to leave. So I think to look for the new trends that coming up, companies that are doing great in AI, great in cyber, great in RTPS, the real-time problem-solving, new concept that's called problem management right now in Gartner. It's a new trend in IT infrastructure environment. So this is the kind of advice that I give them. Just look for the new companies out there that raise the money, try even to be a co-founder with them, or just the first, second, third employee in the company. And then when you're working with startups, it's like roller coaster, but it's really, how do you call it? The satisfaction is amazing when you take something small and make it big, and it grow with you, and you actually decide what to do instead of working with the big companies that most of the time they just tell you how to promote your product, when you start it with startup company or with new product that even mid-sized company, it's amazing trick to do with them.
Yeah, it's a great point that a lot of people that have only worked with Fortune 1000 brands throughout most of their career may not appreciate both the opportunity and the challenges of working for a startup. And the great part is you get to work on things that you may have never been anywhere near in a much larger company. The challenge is you may be used to working in a company where when you got there, the sales playbook was on iteration 117. And there was hundreds of people running that, and you had amazing amounts of brand to lean on and amazing amounts of internal support. And now the extent of your internal support is there's a marketing person and you have 2 other people on your sales team, and you have a CTO to lean on and a CEO to lean on, and maybe there's that much. But yeah, there's a lot of challenges. We're recording this podcast with the idea that it's going to be somewhat evergreen and people will be watching this months, years into the future, but it's hard to miss that the last couple of years, the capital markets and how difficult it's been for conventional SaaS companies to raise Series A, Series B, Series C to go public, has been a very big theme unless you're anchored to AI. So that for sure could influence someone's career choice and even the company's ability to be able to scale and grow if they're not bootstrapping.
Exactly. This exactly what's going on right now with the market.
When you look out at what's going on across Israel, across the Middle East, across the whole region, even globally, what do you believe is the biggest problem that digital infrastructure, data center related businesses are grappling with right now? What do you see as the biggest problem, the biggest potential mistake that they may be making?
Of course, really, really nice, good questions. So I do think it's not a matter of problems or mistakes. First of all, AI is really energy consuming solution all over. So power supply, electricity, it's a big issue. Cooling, it's a huge problem all over, and you need to find out how to address these kind of issues. Green environment in data centers is something that everyone is trying to bring to the data center environment, not necessarily in a good way right now. I think even the personnel in data centers environment they need to bring some young blood and new idea into the conceptions, because to think that the data center environment can stay for the last 20 years or last 10 years the same, it's really not the right state of mind. So new ideas need to come. The data center people or managers need to be open to the new ideas coming up from the market, either how to work with problem management, how to work with automation, how to work with AI, how to work with the new storage devices that's coming up, and the new concept of how is storage working instead of just RAID 5, RAID 10, RAID 6. There is new way to work with storage that data centers need to embrace. So I think it's a combination of be open mind. I know it's traditional environment. I know that a lot of IT managers, if it's not working, I don't want to change. Everything is working. Everything is okay. So we have some backup problem. We have some storage problem. We have some cooling problems. But all around, it's working, and they really afraid of the new concept and the new ideas that's coming up from a lot of startups all over. So yeah, I think people and the new AI energy environment need to be the combination that data center managers have to embrace and start doing the changes. Otherwise, they're going to buy more real estate and more electricity and more pollution and more CO2 time and all the problems that we see all over, instead of trying to actually minimize everything and be open to the new ideas that coming up from the market.
Yeah, I see a lot of that as well. And I think there's some of, if it's not broke, don't fix it. There's some of it, it's the way we've always done it. In some cases, it's extreme risk aversion. In some cases, they blame regulation for why they're not as aggressive with change. I see even in what we do when it comes to marketing and sales. At the risk of overgeneralizing, I think SaaS companies may be a good 5 years ahead of huge parts of the data center industry when it comes to things as basic as sales enablement and transparency and leaning into self-driven buyer's journey and positioning. And it's really strange when I have these conversations with people and they try to tell me that their buyers are different, but the reality is they're actually selling data center related products and services to the exact same IT professionals that SaaS companies are. And are you going to tell me that the coworkers who do things related to facilities are really wired that differently? There definitely is this generational thing going on where there's a big movement in the space globally to get more young people to want to go into these kinds of careers. So there's that to a certain degree, but even more so once you acknowledge that, look at a CEO or C-level executive who's in the later stages of their career, like 65, 75 plus years old, it's very unlikely that the person that's going to take that job next is going to be afraid of change. If anything, it's going to completely open up a passing of the torch moment where innovation and acceleration is valued. And you're right, like when it comes to the heat that's generated by AI, by the GPUs, the grid requirements for high performance compute, that's forcing innovation on the facilities side. So you could say it's proactive, but the reality is it's probably more reactive than proactive at this point, figuring out how to improve the density, how to figure out better metrics on how to measure the progress, figuring out what green really means, as opposed to it just being misused.
I couldn't say it better.
When you think about how the regulatory environment varies globally, what role do you think compliance plays in this decision making?
So as a member of the ISO committee, ITSM for the Israeli voting, I'm the head of the delegation for the ISO committee in Israel. So we see a lot of changes coming up in ISO compliance, 27,000, 20,000, the new 26,000, and so on. So right now, I think data center, colocation, host provider, and so on, really afraid of the new compliance regulation that will come up, especially on the energy conceptions and carbon emission issues, and even service management. That's my ISO committee. I think the changes are it's really coming soon in a year or two, and I don't see that they are ready for it. They are in the committees that we are on. There is a lot of pressure, not to do big changes, not to do a lot of huge intervention, because they actually built multi-billions data centers all over with the compliance regulation that used to be, and now in a year or two, there will come the new regulations and compliance, and then we'll need to invest a lot of money to actually stand in this compliance. I can tell you that they just changes, the few changes, if just right now in Europe, that instead of 10% of new energy, they need to stand up to 50%. So to change the electricity consumption from 10% to 50% in just 6 months alerts, it's really, they really need to start to invest a lot of money in order to stand up in this kind of compliance and regulation. And it's only one of them. And others is coming in this direction. So they need to start invest, they need to start learning, they need to start be proactive in it and understand that the future is coming up to the data centers and environment, and everyone needs to invest in order to stand up and save our planet, be part of the saving of our planet from carbon emission issues and other, plastic issues and sea level issues and all kind of problems that the ISO committee is right now discussing. So my part is service management. It's going to be huge changes, but the investment in this part is not so big. In the other side of energy consumptions and carbon emissions and energy, over there it's going to be a lot of changes. And let's see, it's going to be very, very challenges for the data center environment. We're speaking about Amazon, Google, Akamai, and all these huge companies. Changes is coming.
I hear, even when I speak with people in Europe, especially in the Nordics, there's already some pushback against these giant hyperscale facilities, because what they're trying to do ideally is have decentralized data centers that are sitting in urban areas where they can take the heat and literally pump it out to an office building or apartment building or hot water or swimming pools right next door to get good use for that. And if you have a hyperscale facility that has a massive security parameter where there's no residential or commercial for miles and miles away, you can't do that.
Yeah,
at least not today.
Exactly. So this is one of the issues, and if you build it close to city environment and so on, so you have some kind of a way to do it. But don't forget, a lot of the data centers is either near Nevada or in the desert, deep down, or in the Arctic. So it's going to be a very challenges days for them. And unfortunately, probably the consumer will pay for it.
Yeah. I think a lot of it also is a balancing act in a lot of countries based on how much attention and how much resources they can invest in this relative to other crises that are going on at any given time. So yeah, everyone has a very different approach to this.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com. DCSMI.com.
The good part is there's some entrepreneurs that are working on a lot of innovative solutions to how to deal with this. It's an interesting thing just to look at, for example, the data center operators, which ones employ a chief innovation officer, which ones employ an ESG executive. The reality is, relative to the cost of building even a single facility, the salary for someone like that is extraordinarily small. How much pull that person has to make their initiatives happen is a whole different story. But it seems like at some point, we're going to start to see more operators, even that are more small to mid-size, have to invest in this kind of talent. Otherwise, these initiatives probably are not going to get much attention and will be very reactive in nature.
I can tell you that there is a lot of customers right now that we're speaking with that actually thinking go out from these cloud data centers and actually go back for on their own data center.
Yeah.
And either in their facility or either even in the cloud facility, but they want their own servers, their own storage, their own backup and so on, in order to actually pay for only for what they're using, instead of doesn't know. They really have huge problem how to calculate what the Amazon, Google, Akamai use. So if we're saying this name, but this is the biggest, the bigger one. And I already saw it that few banks, insurance, and governments went out from the cloud and go back to their using and on their own data center.
Yeah, I haven't seen that many people that have exited cloud to go to owning and operating their own facility, but I'm seeing a lot of people that are exiting cloud and going to colocation. It's probably a halfway point between getting more control over both costs and the technology and the regions and regulatory issues than they could if it was in public cloud. There was a word being thrown around maybe 6 months or a year ago, repatriation. And I don't know who came up with the word repatriation, but it talks about exactly that movement. So it's not a matter of public cloud, private cloud, multi-cloud, hybrid, whatever. There's just in general seems to be a pushback against the romance and the dream that people were sold of cloud and how it's actually played out, especially in times when the capital markets have starved a lot of companies of cash that they need to have margin. Everyone's being forced to do more with less, more efficiency. And yeah, you could totally see that if you're looking at a Venn diagram of like the CTO and the CFO sitting down and looking at these huge bills from the hyperscalers.
Exactly. And by the way, in colocation, if I was working right now with a few colocation in the States and Europe, and the most important concept right now that they are implement SaaS solution in order to give the customers full transparency what's going on. And I told them, if you keep it like that, you will keep the customers in the colocation. If you don't give them transparency to understand when is the use, when is the peak, when you actually costing more, but at least they have the picture. And even today, we give them with an eye predictions when it's going to be costing more because it's the 15th of the month, or it's the end of the year, or it's the end of the quarter. And then they have the real picture to understand the gaps of finance when they jumping from payment. So right now, we're giving it in AimBetter to the colocations and other in cyber or other in finance, and it's really working. If you give the transparency, the customers really relax and it still can actually plan the cost of the colocation for the next quarter to year or two with prediction regarding is expanding of people or expanding of data. So it's really the next trend that the colocation need to embrace.
Yeah, and it seems like the first cousin of transparency would be that decade-old concept of server hugging, where you can physically drive to the facility, you can physically go take a tour, you can physically go see your hardware, you can actually have a real conversation with the NOC staff who works there, the facilities managers that work there, and the people that do the remote hands. You can actually have a real relationship with them. I guess the smaller the company, the more likely it is they have a really tight relationship, but even among the huge operators, the big REITs, there is potential for you to have a good for you to actually have a real human relationship where you just more than likely wouldn't have that with the hyperscalers unless you're a huge enterprise account.
Exactly. So what we're doing today with our SOC center that's working 24/7, we actually also, we have the dashboard that we present the customers what's going on and the database system and so on. We give them a report on a daily report, what happened for the last 24 hours. But we also have, if the customers wanted, a camera that's watching his cave. So it actually can see the dashboard, and if you want, you can actually see the cave of his storage and elements that he purchased. So it's like people today ask for the kindergarten, have a real life camera that we always can check what's going on with his kids when he's in kindergarten. So it's actually the same.
Yeah, I was thinking of Ring cameras on people's front porches so they can see that they got package delivery. They can see who's knocking at the door. They can see when people are coming and going from their front entrance. So yeah, for sure. And that's probably some of the much less sexy technology that's in a colocation facility and is very inexpensive to implement. But wow, does that give people peace of mind, being able to see that the physical security part of that.
Exactly. And again, people want transparency. If you give it and transparency and post information between different kind of elements in the data centers in order to actually give the customers the full picture that there is a problem, but it's causing from different elements, and this is the recommendation how to fix it. So this is the kind of new environment that actually Gartner just put it in this hype cycle. It's called machine learning AI problem management. And this is the new environment that AimBetter is standing up. So this is why I joined the company, to actually be again in the front. So if you remember from the beginning, I was in the start of the tape libraries environment. Then I was in the start of the, how do you call it, for the DDoS attack issues. And then for the IT infrastructure environment end-to-end transparency, and now we are moving for the next level. And again, I have to actually teach and learn in the same time.
Well, the content, the education, the training and pre-sales, post-sales training, onboarding, all of that is very, very conducive to using an approach of being proactive in educating and building trust. It helps to make more self-serve available. It scratches the itch of clients and prospects that want to be more in the driver's seat. And this is also research that Gartner's been talking about for a couple of years now, especially when you're selling to IT professionals, is this extreme allergy to spending much time with traditional salespeople with the typical stereotypes that come along with it. I've been talking for 2-3 years and encouraging people to go to their email signature, their LinkedIn profile, their business card, and start coming up with a better synonym and invest in an onboarding program, an internal training program, so your sales professionals actually are more like Big Four consultants and actually can really add value and really are trusted advisors when it comes to their prospects and clients. And it brings up kind of the next thing that I wanted to get your thoughts about is when you look out into the crystal ball 2, 3, 4 years out from now, how does running a sales organization for a company like AimBetter change, or anywhere in enterprise software, infrastructure, data centers? How do you envision that the role of a sales professional or a sales leader is going to change in the next few years?
So I do think that we need to be more professionals. So I think, again, because of my background, to always be the pre-sale, always be the visionary person, and then actually do the sales and teach it to the other guys. I do think that salespeople need to be much more professionals. And today, to learn, it's easy with all the podcasts and AI and YouTube and all the other tools that you have, that you can actually do it online all the time. So learning, it's important. I think with AI, we will get more and more in the lower SaaS solution that probably can be even a boot that will start selling. I'm not speaking about online presentation solution or online website creation solution that people is coming in, try to do a website, and then a boot coming up and show them how to do it, and then push them to actually go to premium or go to similar or basic or something that will from freemium go to premium. I'm speaking about professional sales. In professional sales, I think that the AI tools is going to be very strong, but the human interaction will stay at least for the next 2, 3, 4 years. In the data center, enterprise, mid-enterprise environment, people still need to actually talk to a human being, understand the product. You can use the AI to do a nice demonstration, nice live demo, and so on. But in the end, at least for the next 2, 3, 4 years, human interaction is going to be a very significant base to actually do the enterprise sales.
It definitely helps too when you're selling into mid-market and enterprise, and the unit economics are strong enough that you can afford the talent that you need to build a sales team like that. Whereas kind of the other extreme, when you look at some SaaS companies or hosting companies that are selling to small and medium-sized businesses with much, much lower price points, then there becomes a lot more pressure to automate more. But you're right, where you're talking about professional sales as opposed to product-led growth or self-sign-up, self-onboarding kind of thing. But yeah, when you talk about like the logos and the brands that a company like AimBetter is working with, yeah, for sure. I imagine that they're demanding quite a bit of pre-sales, true consulting to try to figure out who the stakeholders are going to be, what's going to change with the processes, how you get alignment, what the change management is going to look like.
I think,
how they test and pilot this.
I think, by the way, that the SDRs, that there is too much of them, I think the AI boot in the end will change them, will replace them, and all the SDRs out there need to go up and become mid-enterprise salespeople. If they stay in SDRs, they're going to lose the job for the AI boot.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I do see a really interesting retraining, repurposing role for the SDRs as well. I have this thought process that on a considered purchase, most companies should be producing a lot of educational thought leadership content. They should have great educational webinars, great webinar panels, conference-grade content that's so good that if someone took a plane ride and spent 3 days at a conference and they went to this particular session, that you'd get a fantastic review on that. I believe that most companies should have the podcasts and the webinars and the live streams. And I think in a lot of ways, the sales development reps that have a little bit of experience and understanding of the personas could be great to work with a internal marketing team or a media team to be the moderator, the host, and build these relationships, gain this great insight that they can pass to a product manager, build these collaborations industry-wide. So I think for companies that have a little bit of vision, that could be a really interesting role for sales development reps going forward. Historically, also, sales development reps have sometimes moved into sales enablement kind of roles. That could be another interesting thing. Some of them may move into more traditional marketing roles. Some of them move into product management roles. But yeah, for sure, that those early stages of the journey where people don't want the human conversation as much as wanting the educational resources, they'd be great to understand the context of the kinds of questions and the kind of interactions that people would want, except instead of forcing this into 100 dials a day to get to a couple of conversations to book one meeting, they're working with a media team to package these into great podcast interviews, webinar panels, explainer videos, nurturing sequences, carousels, interactive tools, quizzes, all that stuff.
And I think also if the mid-range company that's selling to mid-range enterprise, the customer success role is really, really important to actually invest in this, because this will do the next sales.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been saying for a couple of years now, if you think of the salesperson going forward looking more like a big four consultant, the customer success person should be even more advanced. They should be like the MBA, master's level, PhD version of that person, because they're literally solving problems that have been dumped on them by sales that were sometimes closed before the feature. They were anticipating on the roadmap that this feature would be working, but it isn't quite working. There's some interesting workarounds, but a lot of times they're really in a position with onboarding to save clients. They're in a position to bring that feedback to product managers, that if things can get escalated fast enough and patched, that they can save relationships. And yeah, of course, expansion revenue. The challenge with customer success is, I think, a lot like with the SDRs. I think that self-service interest among especially highly technical buyers is very real. So instead of just envisioning a CSM or an account manager spending all of their time booking meetings with clients, they should be working with a marketing or media team to help create amazing onboarding sequences, tutorial videos. They should have a great academy or university where they run these great courses all the time and bring in clients and channel partners that have been successful and cross-pollinate that knowledge and have quizzes and certifications. There's so much amazing stuff they can do that ends up being a great engine around retention and expansion, but there's got to be some breathing room. And I think a lot of times what ends up happening in undercapitalized companies where CS is reporting into a CRO, there's a lot of pressure for that CS to just be closing all day long. And it's a tough way to build goodwill and build a brand.
Exactly, but you got it exactly, the right approach, the right points.
One more question I wanted to ask for you today was, do you have any favorite must-have tools that you use, that your team uses, that you would fight real hard with your IT leader or your CFO to make sure that it doesn't get pried away from, even if things got a little tight?
So I think right now we're working very nicely with webinars, and the tools is not cheap. Marketing automation marketing, it's also not a cheap product, and if you're working with the right tools, it's too expensive. We do try once in a while to do some payment campaign, LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on. Organic actually is working very nicely, but you do want sometimes, when you do a webinar, to also push it as a payment campaign. So this kind. I think the biggest money right now that we always need to think twice before I pitch into my CFO. It's what kind of event to go and present and have a booth, either medium, small, large. So this is really, really expensive one. But I can tell you that every time we are in the right event, in the right country, we have very nice leads. I can tell you that 2 weeks ago in Floripa in Brazil, we had 50 leads from 3 days events. And in another event in Cybertech Roma, we got in 2 days we got about 45 good leads, meaning we spoke to a person, we spoke one-on-one. There is a need, and so it's really a certified lead. It's not just a card that I took. So I think right now the event is the most expensive one that we are actually spending, and we do need to go to them either as AimBetter or one of our channels.
And you're right. You bring up a really good point. A lot of times people are using the word lead and sales opportunity interchangeably, but based on what you're describing, for sure, these are early stage sales opportunities where you've identified that there's a legitimate need, and you almost could kind of sort of have an idea of what a forecasted close date or forecasted deal size could be based on the company size, where they're located, looking at the pattern recognition for others that have gone through that. So yeah, it's really interesting. When I was thinking of tools, I was thinking more of web apps, but yeah, ads, webinars, events for sure are huge parts of budget that all companies, especially smaller companies, need to pay close attention to. And I do see some instances where companies are doing a fantastic job of matching up their client profile and their buyer personas against an event's anticipated buyer personas, at least who they attracted last year and who they think they're going to attract this year. But then I also see some people that get lured into the brand too much and don't think about whether there's a good match between their target market and who's going to be at the conference. But yeah, for sure, it's something that everyone should be thinking about.
I can tell you that the best way to actually understand if you have the market, or if you have the right pitch, or if you have the right the right approach, is in events. And then go one-on-one with customers. So the combination of one-on-one with customers and events, speaking and understand if the pitch is right, if your your elevated pitch is correct, is actually going to event and test it in the ground. And if it's working, you got very nice leads. If it's not working, you can change, and you have you see the reaction of people, and then you continue. And if it doesn't close the deals, so you have kind of A/B test to check. Okay, let's do something differently, and see the reaction.
Yeah, the real-time feedback and being able to get the body language of how they react to different approaches of messaging is invaluable, so much to the point where it's almost a little bit of focus group almost at the same time that you're starting a sales process, to the point where you'd want to bring your product manager or your marketing leader or someone with you, sitting there with you side by side, so they can see exactly what's happening in these conversations. Because in some cases, the insights lead to product roadmap revisions and lead to marketing strategy changes and updates and sales enablement updates. This is all super, super fascinating stuff. And we could do a whole separate episode just on how to get the most out of conferences, how to book great meetings, what needs to happen before, during, and after to improve ROI. I actually had some conversations a couple of years back with the big organizers about putting together formal programs like this. Yeah, there is a huge need. Who would be good to interview on a future episode of this podcast to either also has their own podcast or YouTuber, or just has really great knowledge to be able to share to the industry around the topic of go-to-market for digital infrastructure, data center related companies, regardless of whether they're operators or a technology company like AimBetter or facilities company or construction or real estate company.
So regarding the people I told you, I will give you some names from the industry that you can. It would be great for you to interview them. Regarding the market, the podcasts and webinars, so I'm listening to Bloomberg on the financial concept of the industry. I'm listening for your DCSMI channel in YouTube. It's really interesting to hear the other data center people, data center engineers and experts. I'm usually trying to, when I need something like a new concept or a new idea, I'm usually go to YouTube, try to find who is already speaking about it, who already did some nice interview or course or podcast about it, and it really depends on the subject that I'm looking for. So I don't have someone specifically, but I'm browsing because each time I find different ones, and if they're interesting, for sure I have something to learn from them.
I use YouTube the exact same way. A lot of people outside of content probably don't realize that YouTube is the it's the second most popular search engine on the planet. And as companies are starting to see their investments in traditional search engine optimization get less effective over time because of the AI results and Gemini and Copilot and ChatGPT, YouTube is going to be a place where I think people are going to increasingly pay a lot more attention for content creation. The approach we were talking about with education and transparency for sure has a great place for companies to put their subject matter expert there. So I use it the exact same way. Actually, one other thing that I find super helpful is a lot of times I listen to the videos as opposed to necessarily watching them. Like if I'm going out for a walk in the morning to get a workout in or at the gym or something like that, and it's not conducive, or driving and not conducive to actually watch the screen, you can still get most of the value from a lot of YouTube videos by just listening to the audio.
Yeah, by the way, when you listen, it's one of the very best way to actually learn and remember it. And sometimes I have a technique that I'm listening for the subject, and then next day I'm listening again, and after 2 days I'm listening to again. So if you take a week and listen for the same subject, even from different perspective, you actually learn a lot. So in a week, if you concentrate with one subject, you actually can become almost like an expert.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a tremendous amount of great knowledge and resources that are out there. Tsafrir, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us so generously today. I know so many people are going to get a ton of value from watching and listening to this podcast. If someone wants to follow what you're working on, connect with you, get in touch, is LinkedIn a good channel for you?
Yes, of course. LinkedIn is, it's a temple of knowledge. So everything we put it in LinkedIn, either in AimBetter page or either in my place, in my LinkedIn page. So, of course, LinkedIn is the place to be.
And for someone that wants to learn more about what you're working on with AimBetter and real-time problem solving, what's the best resource? The website for AimBetter, the LinkedIn, YouTube, what's the best channel for someone to explore?
So again, AimBetter.com, everything is over there, and we have a lot of testimonials, a lot of case studies, a lot of blogs and posts, and of course LinkedIn. And if someone wants to see even funny stuff and easy stuff, Facebook. We also have a very nice page in Facebook.
That's terrific. I've been speaking today with Tsafrir Lahav from AimBetter. His company provides automated management, real-time problem solving for enterprise IT organizations all over the globe. AimBetter works with international clients all over the globe, but is based in Israel. Tsafrir, I really appreciate you joining me today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Joshua. Really, really enjoy it. Really, really thank you very much. And continue this podcast concept. It's really, really going to help a lot of people all the time.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.